Hello everyone, my name is Emiliano Reynolds Molina and this is The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Antes de empezar con esta exposición, quiero hablar sobre las críticas. Las voy a decir en español para expresarme un poco mejor y ya después el resto de la presentación será en inglés. Esta historia es clásica de terror que ha sido objeto de numerosas críticas a lo largo de los años. A continuación voy a presentar las críticas más comunes. Personajes unidimensionales. A menudo se ha criticado que los personajes de la historia, incluyendo el narrador y las víctimas, son planos y carecen de profundidad. No se sabe mucho acerca de ellos, excepto lo que se necesita para avanzar en la trama. Tono melodramático. Algunos críticos han cuestionado la calidad literaria de la historia, debido al tono melodramático y exagerado utilizado por Poe. La forma en la que el narrador describe su propia locura puede parecer excesiva para algunos lectores. Tema predecible. Muchos críticos han señalado que la historia es predecible y que el desenlace es obvio desde el principio. La mayoría de los lectores pueden adivinar el final antes de llegar a él. Falta de contexto. Muchos críticos han argumentado que la historia carece de contexto. No se sabe mucho acerca del narrador o de las víctimas, ni se ofrece información sobre el lugar o el tiempo en el que se desarrolla la historia. Sin embargo, considero que tiene cosas buenas. Tiene una trama intrigante. La trama de este libro es intensa y emocionante. La historia gira en torno a un narrador anónimo que se obsesiona con el ojo de un anciano y finalmente lo mata. La tensión aumenta a medida que el narrador intenta ocultar su crimen. El uso del lenguaje y la técnica literaria. La historia es un ejemplo impresionante del uso del lenguaje y la técnica literaria por parte de Poe. La forma en la que el narrador habla de su propia locura, la representación constante de palabras y frases clave y la atención al detalle en la descripción de la habitación y sus elementos. Todo esto crea una atmósfera tensa y perturbadora. Es un clásico de la literatura de terror. The Telltale Heart es un clásico de la literatura de terror y ha sido objeto de numerosas adaptaciones en películas, obras de teatro y otros medios. La historia ha tenido una gran influencia en la literatura de terror moderna y ha inspirado a muchos autores a escribir historias similares. Esta historia le da un vistazo a la psique humana. La historia también es un estudio fascinante de la psique humana. El narrador sufre de una obsesión obsesiva y finalmente pierde el control debido a su propia locura. La historia muestra cómo la obsesión y la locura pueden afectar la mente humana. His legacy. Poe is considered one of the most important and original writers in American literature and has been the subject of numerous critical inspirations and analysis. His life and work have been the subject of many films, plays, and adaptations of the media, and his influence continues today. His childhood and youth. Poe was born in Boston in 1809 and lost his parents at an early age. Being adopted by wealthy couple, his experience of loss and his relationship with his stepfather influenced his work and personality. His literary career. Poe began writing in his teens and excelled in journalism and poetry. He wrote stories such as The Golden Beetle, The Black Cat and The Telltale Heart, that became a classic of horror and mystery literature. His personal life. Paul had tumultuous personal life, with several failed romantic relationships and problems with alcohol and mental health. He married his cousin Virginia Clem, who died young of tuberculosis. His influence on literature. Paul's work has been generally influential in American and world literature. His writing style and his theme have inspired other writers and poets such as H.P. Lovecraft, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Jules Verne. Summary. The narrator begins his story by explaining that he is not crazy, although he has done something terrible. He lives with an old person whose closest is not mentioned. However, there is something that he doesn't like about this old person. He describes his obsession with the old man's eye, which he finds strange and sickening, leading him to plan and execute the murder. The narrator waits in the dark for several nights until he finally attacks the old person while he is sleeping, suffocating and dismembering him to hide the body under the floor of his house to hide what he just did. After hiding the body under the floor, the narrator feels confident that his crime is well hidden. The police arrives at the narrator's house because some people heard certain strange noises coming from his house. The narrator, nervous and desperate to hide the crime from them, gets them cordially and invites them into his house. Everything was going well. The policemen felt comfortable, they had a good conversation, they were believing everything. However, the narrator begins to hear a constant noise, as if it were the old man's heartbeat, which gradually increased in intensity. The narrator becomes increasingly paranoid and obsessive, convinced that the noise is proof of his guilt and that everyone can hear it. Finally, the narrator confesses his crime to the policeman, showing that the old man's heart is still beating and that they remove the floorboards so they can see the body. The tale ends with the narrator in a sanity of madness, convinced that his confession to he is proof of his sanity and that he has freed his soul from the weight of his guilt for his. Hypothesis and justification. Hypothesis. The main character of the Telltale Heart truly insane, or is he simply a victim of his own guilty conscience? The question, is the main character in the Telltale Heart truly insane, or is he simply a victim of his own guilty conscience? It's an interesting hypothesis because it invites a deep reflection of the nature of madness and guilt, and how these two forces can interact in the human mind. Furthermore, the question is particularly relevant for the analysis of the work of Edgar Allan Poe, since the author was characterized by exploring complex physiological themes in his stories. By considering the question as a hypothesis, we can carefully examine the evidence present in the story to determine if the main character is truly insane or if his behavior can be explained by his guilty conscience. We can analyze his behavior, his language, and his perspective to determine if he is acting out of an unbalanced mind or simply dilating with overwhelming feelings of guilt. By exploring this hypothesis, we can deepen our understanding of Poe's work and his depiction of the inner conflict of the human mind. We can also apply this question to other literature's works and real-life cases to analyze how madness and guilt can affect our perceptions and behavior. Ultimately, the hypothesis may lead to deeper understanding of the complexity of the human mind and how it interacts with the emotional and psychological forces that drive us. Then we have the citations. I even love him. He had never hurt me. I did not want his money. I think it was his eye. This citation highlights the main character obsession with the old man's eye, which could be interpreted as a sign of mentality instability. And so I finally decided I had to kill the old man and close that eye forever. I chose this citation because it's an important moment when the narrator decides to commit the murder of the old man. The narrator is haunted by the old man's eye, which he described as a vulture eye. The eye bothers and torments him, and the narrator feels justified in killing the old man to get rid of it presently. However, the narrator also seems to be fighting his own sanity, causing the reader to question the validity of the motives and the veracity of the narrative. They heard the suspect. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. I chose this citation because you probably found it very powerful and expressive of the narrator's state of mind. The narrator had killed an old man, but guilty and paranoid was consuming him. The citation shows how the narrators feel increasingly isolated and persecuted, even though he is not directly suspected by others. Also, the phrase, "they were making a mockery of my horror," shows how the narrator believes that others are making fun of his fear and anguish, which increase his paranoia. In conclusion, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe is a chilling and disturbing story that explores the depth of guilt and madness. The narrator's obsession with the old man's eye leads him to commit a genocide crime, and his guilt manifested itself in the form of constant, pounding heartbeat. The story is a masterful study of the human psyche and the descent into madness. It highlights the rationality of guilt and how it can consume an individual, leading them to commit unimaginable acts. The narrator's insistence that he is not mad, despite his abuse insanity, serves as rationality tale about the dangers of denying one's mental states. Overall, The Telltale Heart is a haunting tale that continues to captivate readers and leave them pondering the dark aspects of human nature.